A billionaire sits alone in the park late at night, drowning in regret and ready to end it all. Suddenly, a little girl steps out of the shadows, holding a crumpled $10 bill in her shaking hand. "Please, mister," she says softly. "Will you be my dad for one day?" The words stop him cold. Then, without really knowing why, he says yes, never realizing that choice will change both their lives forever. Before we go back, tell me where you're watching from. And subscribe, because tomorrow's story will break your heart in the best way. Alexander Grant stared at the $10 bill in the child's outstretched hand. The bill was crumpled, worn soft at the edges like it had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times. In her other hand, she held a blue cookie tin, the kind that once held butter cookies from Denmark, full of coins that clinked softly when she shifted her weight. The girl couldn't have been more than 10 years old. Dirt smudged her left cheek. She wore a gray hoodie streaked with grime, the fabric thinned and torn at the cuffs, sleeves swallowing her hands. Her jeans were too short, her sneakers held together with duct tape, her hair tangled in knots that spoke of sleepless nights, not months of neglect. But her eyes, brown and ancient, fixed on him with an intensity that made his chest tighten. "Please, mister," she said. Her voice shook, but she didn't lower the money. "It's all I have, $10.15. Will you take it?" Alexander blinked. His mind moved slowly, sluggish from the bourbon he'd drunk before leaving his office. Before wandering into Central Park at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night in January. Before sitting on this stone bench near Bethesda Fountain and seriously considering which direction to walk when he stood up. Toward home, or toward Fifth Avenue traffic? "I don't understand," he said. His own voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from someone else's throat. "I'm buying something, from you." The girl's hand trembled now, making the bill flutter. "Something really important. Please, I've been saving for 4 months. He looked at her more closely. The gray hoodie, dirty, threadbare, hanging loose on her small frame, looked like it had once belonged to a grown man. The jeans were torn at both knees, not fashionably but from wear. The sneakers were held together with duct tape, and that blue tin of coins gripped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. A runaway. Not a street kid hardened by years, but a child who had been out here just long enough to learn how cold January could be. "I don't need money," he said quietly. Her face crumpled. The hand holding the bill dropped slightly. "You won't do it then?" "Do what?" "I don't even know what you're asking." She took a breath, the kind of breath people take before jumping off something high. Before doing something that terrifies them but feels necessary anyway. "Will you be my dad?" The words came out in a rush. "Just for one day, tomorrow. There's this thing at school, career day, and everyone's bringing their dads to talk about their jobs, and I thought if I could pay someone, if I could buy just one day of having a father show up for me, maybe." Her voice broke. She wiped her eyes quickly with the sleeve of her gray hoodie, angry at herself for crying. Alexander frowned slightly. "Wait, school. You still go to school?" Lena nodded quickly. Defensive now. "Yeah, Roosevelt Elementary. I still go when I can. Mrs. Alvarez, the lady at the front desk, she knows, I think. Pretends not to. Sometimes she leaves sandwiches on her desk by accident. She says as long as I keep my grades up and don't cause trouble, she won't tell anyone I haven't been home." Technically, Lena shouldn't have been in class that week. She'd vanished from her stepfather's apartment 5 days ago. But Mrs. Alvarez had quietly kept her name on the roster, marking her present so no one would flag her missing too soon. "Someone has to keep track of you," she'd whispered once. "Otherwise you disappear." Alexander's chest constricted. The bourbon fog in his head cleared instantly, replaced by something sharp and painful. He found himself leaning forward, studying this child who just asked to purchase 24 hours of paternal attention. "Maybe what?" His voice came out softer than he'd intended. "Maybe I could remember what it feels like to matter to someone." She held out the money again, more insistently now. "Please, I know $10 isn't much to someone like you, but it's everything to me, every penny, every coin. 4 months of saving, and I'm offering all of it, for just one day." The wind picked up, cutting through Alexander's coat. He didn't feel it, couldn't feel anything, except the weight of this moment, this impossible question. His daughter Emma's face flashed in his mind. Emma at 10, laughing, alive, begging him to come to her school for career day 3 years ago. He'd sent his assistant instead. Too busy, too important. A merger that couldn't wait. "It's okay, Daddy," Emma had said on the phone, trying to hide her disappointment. "I understand, work is important." But her eyes had been red when he got home that night. Rebecca had barely spoken to him for a week. Now Emma was dead. Rebecca was dead, and this child, this stranger, was offering him money to be the father he should have been. "Where are your parents?" The question came out rougher than he meant. The girl flinched. "My mama died last spring. Cancer. My real dad died when I was 4. I don't remember him." She hesitated, touched her cheek where Alexander now noticed a fading yellow bruise. "And my stepdad, he's why I ran away. Why I've been in the park." Something cold and sharp moved through Alexander's chest. "He hurt you, among other things." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was reading a grocery list. "But that doesn't matter now. He's gone. Mama's gone. Everyone's gone. It's just me, and I've learned that if you want something in this world, you have to pay for it. Nothing's free, so I'm paying. $10, one day, that's the deal." Alexander looked at her outstretched hand, at the money she'd saved coin by coin, dollar by dollar for 4 months, money that could have bought food, warmth, medicine. Instead she'd hoarded it for this, for one day of not being alone. His throat closed, his eyes burned. For 6 months, since that state trooper knocked on his door at 2 in the morning, since he'd identified his wife's and daughter's bodies in the morgue, since he'd buried them side by side in a cemetery in Westchester, he'd felt nothing but a vast gray emptiness, a void so complete it had swallowed everything else. But this he felt. "How old are you?" he asked. 10, almost 11, "And you've been on your own for—" She hesitated. 5 days. "I've been sleeping in the park. I know I should go back to school, but I don't want them to find me. I don't want to go back there." He stared at her, a 10-year-old hiding in Central Park in the middle of winter. "So will you do it?" she whispered. "Please, I promise I'll be good. I won't cause trouble. I just need someone to show up tomorrow, to stand next to me, to make the other kids stop saying I'm worthless because nobody wants me, to prove that someone somewhere thinks I'm worth $10. The last part gutted him. This child had calculated her worth at $10. One day of borrowed fatherhood, for the price of a movie ticket and popcorn. Emma's voice echoed in his memory. "Daddy, we went to the shelter today for my service project. There are kids there who have nothing, and nobody sees them. Nobody cares. It's like they're invisible. Promise me you'll see them. Promise me you won't look away." He'd promised, and then he'd gone right back to his corner office and his billion-dollar deals, and he'd looked away from everything that didn't directly profit him. But he was seeing now. Alexander reached out slowly and gently pushed the girl's hand down, the hand holding the money. "Keep your $10. Her face collapsed. "You won't?" "I'll do it. I'll be your father tomorrow. But not for money. You keep what you saved. You earned it." The transformation was instant. Her eyes went wide, her mouth opened. For a moment she just stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. "Really?" The word came out as a whisper. "You'll really be my dad tomorrow?" "Yes, for free." "For free? Why? Nobody does anything for free, especially not for kids like me." Alexander thought about the answer to that question. Thought about how 5 minutes ago he'd been sitting on this bench deciding which direction to walk. Toward home and another sleepless night staring at photos of his dead family, or toward Fifth Avenue, and the kind of accident that wouldn't look like suicide. He thought about how this child had interrupted that decision, how her question had given him something he hadn't had in 6 months, a reason to see tomorrow. But that was too heavy to put on a 10-year-old. "Because you asked," he said simply, "and because someone should have said yes a long time ago." Her face crumpled. She launched herself at him, wrapping thin arms around his neck. He caught her awkwardly. He hadn't hugged anyone in months, and felt how light she was. Too light, all bones and angles and not enough food. "Thank you," she sobbed into his shoulder. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." He held her while she cried, held this stranger who somehow didn't feel like a stranger. His hands shook, his chest ached. Something was breaking open inside him, something that had been sealed shut since the funeral. When she pulled back, her face was blotchy and wet, but she was smiling. "My name's Lena," she said. "Lena Harper. What's yours?" "Alexander. Alexander Grant." She tested his name silently, lips moving. "Then can I call you Dad Alex? Just for tomorrow, just while we're pretending." His throat closed again. He managed a nod. "Dad Alex," she repeated, like she was trying it on, like she was checking if it fit. "Okay. So what time should I meet you?" "School starts at 8:45, but career day doesn't start until 9. Should I meet you at the school, or somewhere else? I don't want you to see where I sleep. It's not nice." And just like that, the logistics hit him. This child was going to leave, was going to disappear back into the park, sleep under a bench in 15-degree weather, wake up cold and scared and alone, and then meet him tomorrow like this was normal. Every instinct screamed no. "Lena," he said carefully. "When was the last time you ate?" She thought about it. "Yesterday morning. Mr. Patel gave me a sandwich that was about to expire." "And where were you planning to sleep tonight?" "My tree. The one with the bent branch over there." She pointed across the park. "It's not so bad. I have a tarp and some cardboard, and it's not supposed to snow. It's 15 degrees. I've slept outside before." Alexander stood up. The decision made itself. "No, no what? No, you're not sleeping outside tonight. Not in 15-degree weather, not anywhere." He pulled out his phone then stopped. Who was he calling? What was he doing? He had no plan, no idea what came next, just a bone-deep certainty that he couldn't let this child disappear into the January night. Lena backed up a step, her expression shifted, open and hopeful to closed and wary. "What are you doing?" I don't know, but I can't let you freeze in the park. I'll be fine. I've been fine for days." She lifted her chin. "I'm not scared of the cold." "I am," he said quietly. "For you." "Don't call them," she said suddenly. "I know that look. You're going to call them, the police, social services, and they'll take me back." "I can't go back. I wasn't." "Everyone says that. Everyone who finds out calls them. They think they're helping, but they're not. They'll send me back to him, and he'll be mad this time. Really mad." Her voice cracked. "I shouldn't have asked you. This was stupid. I'm sorry I bothered you." "Wait." Alexander held up both hands, showing he wasn't reaching for his phone. "Just wait. Don't run, please." She stopped but didn't come closer. "Why not?" "Because I want to help you, really help you, but I don't know how, and I'm scared that if I do the wrong thing, if I make the wrong choice, I'll make everything worse, so I need you to help me understand. What do you need? Right now, tonight, what do you actually need?" Lena studied him for a long moment, weighing something in that ancient 10-year-old mind. "I need somewhere warm to sleep," she said finally. "Somewhere safe, just for tonight. And then tomorrow, I need you to show up at Roosevelt Elementary at 9 a.m. for career day. That's it. That's all I need. 2 things. Can you do that without calling anyone? Without making it complicated?" Every rational part of Alexander's brain screamed that this was insane, that he couldn't just take a runaway home, that there were laws, procedures, systems designed to handle this, that he was a 52-year-old single man with no business bringing home a 10-year-old girl he'd met 30 minutes ago in a park. But he thought about Emma, about how she'd volunteered at shelters, how she'd come home angry about the kids who slipped through the cracks. "Daddy, they need people who care more about helping than following rules. Promise me you'll be that person if you ever get the chance." Another promise he'd failed to keep. Until now. "I have a guest room," he heard himself say. "In my apartment. It's warm, it's safe. You can sleep there tonight, and tomorrow, I'll be at Roosevelt Elementary at 9 a.m. sharp. No social services, no police. Not tonight, just 2 people helping each other. Deal?" Suspicion and hope warred in her expression. "You promise? You're not lying." "I promise." "And Lena, if at any point you feel unsafe, if anything feels wrong, you run, you scream, you do whatever you need to do. I'm not one of the bad ones, but I know you have no reason to trust that. So the deal is you stay as long as you feel safe. The moment you don't, you leave. No questions. Okay?" She searched his face. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. Okay, but I'm keeping my $10, just in case this is a dream and I wake up and you're gone. Fair enough. They started walking. Out of the park, toward Fifth Avenue, toward his building. Lena walked slightly behind him, maintaining distance, ready to run if needed. Her instincts were sharp, too sharp for a child her age. Alexander's hands shook as they walked. What was he doing? This was insane, reckless, possibly illegal, definitely complicated. But for the first time in 6 months, the emptiness inside him felt less vast. For the first time since the funeral, he had something to do tomorrow, someone depending on him, a reason to not walk into Fifth Avenue traffic. A 10-year-old girl with $10 had just saved his life, and he didn't even think she knew it. The lobby of Alexander's building gleamed, marble floors polished to mirrors, chandeliers that cost more than most people's cars, a doorman in a uniform that looked vaguely military. Lena stopped in the entrance, her taped-together sneakers squeaking on the marble. "You live here?" Her voice echoed in the vast space. Yes. She looked up at the chandelier, then down at her feet. "I'm going to get your floor dirty. Floors can be cleaned." But she didn't move, just stood there suddenly small in a way she hadn't been in the park. There, she'd been fierce, determined. Now, surrounded by wealth she couldn't comprehend, she seemed to shrink. The doorman, Carlos, who'd worked this shift for 15 years, approached with a professional smile that didn't quite hide his concern. His eyes moved from Alexander to Lena, and back again. "Good evening, Mr. Grant." Carlos's tone was carefully neutral. "Working late?" Something like that. "And this is Lena. She'll be staying with me for a while." Carlos's smile tightened. His hand moved almost imperceptibly toward the phone at his desk. "I see. Should I? Is there anyone I should notify? Any arrangements?" It was the responsible question. The right question. The question that would bring social services and police and a whole cascade of bureaucracy that would end with Lena being dragged back to a man she clearly feared. Alexander saw her tense beside him, saw her weight shift to the balls of her feet, ready to bolt. "That won't be necessary," he said firmly. "But thank you, Carlos. Mr. Grant, I don't mean to overstep, but you're not overstepping. I appreciate your concern, but everything's fine. I'll explain more tomorrow. Right now we both need sleep." Carlos held his gaze for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Of course, sir. Have a good evening." The elevator ride was silent. Lena stared at her reflection in the polished brass walls. Alexander watched her watching herself. He wondered what she saw, what it felt like to go from sleeping in a park for 5 nights to riding an elevator that probably cost more than her mother had earned in a month. "I've never been this high up," Lena whispered. "Except once. I snuck onto a subway train going to the airport, rode it all the way out, just to see, just to be warm. But that doesn't count, does it? Why'd you go to the airport?" "To watch people. They all looked like they were going somewhere. I liked imagining where, making up stories about them. The woman with the big hat was going to Paris to see her granddaughter. The man with the briefcase was flying to Tokyo for important business. The girl with the backpack was starting college in California." She paused. "Do you travel a lot?" "I used to." "Why not anymore?" "No reason to. No one to travel with." The elevator doors opened directly into his apartment, a feature that had cost an obscene amount but had seemed essential when he'd purchased the place 8 years ago. Private, exclusive, the ability to come and go without neighbors seeing. Now it just felt empty. Lena stepped out slowly. Her eyes went wide. "This is," she turned in a circle. "This is where you live, all of this?" Yes. The apartment sprawled across the entire 38th floor. 4,000 square feet of space that Alexander barely used. Floor-to-ceiling windows showing Central Park spread out below like a dark carpet dotted with lights. Furniture carefully selected by a designer Rebecca had hired. Beige and gray and white, modern, minimalist, expensive, cold. Lena walked to the windows and pressed her face against the glass. Her breath fogged it. "I can see my tree," she said softly. "That one, with the bent branch. That's where I was sleeping. I can see it from here." She turned to him, something like wonder in her voice. "You were right above me, all this time, and I didn't even know." The statement hit Alexander in the chest. How many nights had he stood at these windows, looking down at the park, never knowing that a child was hiding under those trees? How many nights had he been 38 floors above her fear, and never once looked down far enough to see? His hands clenched at his sides. When was the last time you ate? Real food, I mean. Not a half sandwich. She thought about it. Before I ran, Mama's funeral had food, little sandwiches and cookies. I ate until I felt sick. That was months ago. I've eaten since then, she said quickly. Just not meals, not sit-down food, mostly whatever people give me or what I can afford. Mr. Patel at the deli gives me things sometimes. Alexander pulled out his phone before he could think about it. What do you like? Pizza, Chinese, Thai? We can order anything. Lena looked at him like he'd started speaking a foreign language. Order? Like, delivery? Yes, people do that. Just call and food comes to them. You've never ordered delivery? She shook her head. Mama and I had pizza once, for my 8th birthday. We saved up for a month. It was, her face lit up with the memory. It was the best thing I ever ate. Can we have that? Pizza? Is that too expensive? Something cracked in Alexander's chest. Lena, I need you to understand something. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but I need you to try to believe it. He knelt down so they were eye level. Money is not an issue, not for food, not for anything you need. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. So please, and I mean this, never worry about whether something is too expensive. Just tell me what you want, okay? But no buts. If you want pizza, we're getting pizza. If you want 10 pizzas, we're getting 10 pizzas. The money doesn't matter. You matter. What you need matters. Got it? She stared at him. How much money do you have? He almost laughed. A lot. Like, $1,000. More than that. 10,000. Keep going. Her eyes got wider. A million? Keep going. A billion? She said it like she didn't quite believe billion was a real number. Something like that. She sat down hard on the floor. Just sat right there on his expensive carpet, and stared at nothing. You're one of them. The people in the tall buildings. The ones Mama used to clean for. The ones who don't see people like us. The words stabbed him, because she was right. He'd been exactly that person. Still was probably, except for this moment, this strange twist of fate that had put her in front of him. I'm trying to do better, he said quietly. Will you help me? Help you what? See people, really see them, the way your mama would have wanted, the way you deserve. She studied his face for a long moment, then okay. But you have to teach me stuff too, like how to order pizza, and how to live in a place like this without breaking things. Deal. He ordered 3 pizzas, large, because he had no idea how much a 10-year-old who hadn't eaten properly in days could eat. While they waited, he showed her to the guest room. The room was impersonal. Beige walls, white bedding, abstract art that meant nothing. It looked like a hotel room, like no one had ever slept there. Like no one had ever lived there, because no one had. This is for me? Lena stood in the doorway, not entering. It is, the bathroom's through there. There should be towels and stuff, toiletries. He realized he had no idea what a 10-year-old girl needed. What products Emma had used at that age. Rebecca had handled all of that. God, he missed Rebecca. Can I take a shower? Lena asked. A real one. With hot water. Of course. Take as long as you want. How long is too long? There's no too long. Use all the hot water if you want. She looked at him like he'd offered her the moon. Really? Really, I'll call you when the pizza gets here. She disappeared into the bathroom. A moment later he heard water running. Then faintly, the sound of crying. Alexander stood outside the door, hand raised to knock, to ask if she was okay. Then he lowered his hand. Let her have this, let her have privacy to break down without an audience. He understood that need. In his own bedroom, he pulled out his phone and called the only person he trusted completely. Gerald Pritchard answered on the second ring. Alex, it's almost midnight. What's wrong? I need your help. What kind of help? Gerald's voice sharpened. Are you okay? You sound weird. I don't know what I am. I met someone tonight, in the park. A little girl, she's 10, she ran away from home. Her stepfather's been hurting her. She's been sleeping outside for 5 nights, and she asked me. His voice broke. She asked me to be her father. For one day, she offered me $10, everything she had, just for one day of not being alone. Silence on the line. Then where is she now? In my guest bathroom, taking a shower. Jesus Christ, Alex, I couldn't leave her there. I couldn't. I'm not saying you should have. I'm saying this is complicated, legally complicated. You've got an unaccompanied minor in your home, no parental consent, no legal guardianship. If anyone finds out, if your doorman calls it in, if a neighbor sees her, you could be arrested for harboring a runaway, or worse. So what do I do? Take her back to the park, let her freeze? No, God, no. But you need to handle this the right way. First thing tomorrow we're calling child services. We're going to explain the situation, get emergency placement authorization, and she's terrified of child services. She said they'll send her back to him, that the system doesn't always protect kids like her. The system isn't perfect, but it's better than her sleeping in a park, is it? Because from where I'm standing, a 10-year-old choosing the streets over her own home suggests the system hasn't protected her at all. Gerald sighed. You're right, but Alex, you can't just keep her. There are procedures, laws, ways this has to be done if you want to actually help her long term. I know, I'm just trying to get her through tonight. Tomorrow we figure out the rest. Tomorrow I'm coming over, 9 a.m. We're calling Sarah Reed. She's the best family law attorney in the city, and we're doing this right. Understood? Understood. And Alex, yeah, are you sure this isn't about Emma? About trying to save her by saving this girl? The question hit him like a physical blow. I don't know, maybe, probably. Does that make it wrong? It makes it something you need to be honest about, with yourself and with this kid, because if you start this and then bail because it gets too hard, because it hurts too much, you'll damage her more than her stepfather ever could. I won't bail. You say that now, but raising a traumatized child isn't like running a company, Alex. You can't just delegate when it gets difficult. You can't optimize the hard parts away. I know that. Do you? Because your track record with commitment isn't great. You fired 300 people in the last decade. You've walked away from bad investments without a second thought. You're famous for cutting losses, but you can't cut your losses with a kid. Alexander closed his eyes, thought about Emma, about all the school events he'd missed, all the bedtime stories he'd been too busy to read, all the times he'd chosen work over her, all the ways he'd failed her when she was alive. I won't fail this one, he said quietly. I can't. After hanging up, Alexander sat on the edge of his bed and stared at the photo on his nightstand. Rebecca and Emma at the beach, the last good day before the accident. They were laughing. Emma was making a face at the camera. Rebecca was trying to push her into the waves. Both of them alive, both of them happy, both of them gone. I'm sorry, he whispered to them. I'm sorry I wasn't there, that I didn't make time, that I thought work mattered more than you did. I'm sorry for all of it, but if you're watching, if you can see me somehow, please help me not screw this up. Help me be the father I should have been. The photo didn't answer. It never did. A knock on his door. Lena stood there in an old NYU t-shirt he'd found in the guest room drawer. Emma's, from a college visit sophomore year. The shirt hung to Lena's knees, turning her into a tiny ghost. Her hair was wet and combed. Her face was scrubbed clean. Without the dirt and fear, she looked younger, more fragile, like if he touched her she might shatter. The doorman buzzed. She said, "Pizza's here, but I don't have money to pay for it. I've got it covered. Come on." They ate sitting on his living room floor. Her idea. She said the dining table felt too fancy, too formal. So they sat on his $3,000 carpet and ate pizza straight from the box. Lena ate slowly at first, then faster, then frantically, like she couldn't believe the food was real and might vanish if she didn't eat fast enough. Alexander watched her, and felt his chest crack open a little more. When she finally slowed down, he asked, "Good? The best thing I ever ate." She looked at the remaining pizza. Is it okay if I save some for tomorrow? We can get more pizza tomorrow. Fresh pizza. You don't have to save it. But what if there's no tomorrow? What if this is a dream? It's not a dream, but what if it is? I need to save some. just in case. Alexander didn't argue, just helped her wrap 3 slices in foil and put them in the refrigerator, watched her check twice to make sure they were really there. Back in the living room, she curled up on the couch. Her eyes were drooping, but she fought it, like she was afraid that if she slept she'd wake up back under her tree, or worse, back in that apartment with him. Dad, Alex. The name came out soft, tentative. Yeah? Can I ask you something? Anything. Why were you so sad? In the park, I mean. You looked like you wanted to disappear, like you were deciding whether to stay or go. Alexander's breath caught. She'd seen that. This child who'd been hiding for less than a week had still managed to see through him in seconds. To see what no one else had noticed in 6 months, that he was drowning, that he'd been standing on the edge, ready to let the world take him. I lost my family, he said quietly. My wife and daughter 6 months ago, car accident, and I haven't figured out how to keep living without them. Lena nodded slowly. I felt like that when Mama died, like there was no point in being alive if she wasn't here. But then I thought, if I died she'd be gone forever, all the way gone. But if I stayed alive, I could remember her. I could keep her alive in my head, in my stories, in the things I do that she taught me. She looked up at him with those ancient eyes. Maybe your family's like that too. Maybe they're not all the way gone. Maybe they're here in you as long as you remember them. That's a nice thought. It's not just a thought. Mama told me that before she died. She said, baby girl, I'm going to live in your heart. And as long as your heart keeps beating, I'm still alive. So I keep my heart beating for her. Maybe you could keep yours beating for them. Alexander felt tears he couldn't stop. Felt them run down his face unchecked. This child, this impossibly wise, impossibly brave child, had just given him something 6 months of grief couldn't touch. Permission to keep living. Thank you, he managed. For what? For saving my life tonight. I didn't save your life. I just asked you to be my dad. Same thing. She smiled, then yawned. I'm really tired. Can I go to bed now? Of course. He walked her back to the guest room, pulled back the covers. She climbed in and he tucked her in the way he used to tuck Emma in. The way he thought he'd never tuck anyone in again. Will you stay? Lena asked. Until I fall asleep. I get scared in the dark sometimes. I keep thinking someone's going to find me. Someone bad. I'll stay as long as you need. He sat in the chair beside the bed, held her hand small and cold, with faint marks still visible on her wrist, watched her fight sleep until she couldn't fight anymore. Just before she went under completely, she whispered, thank you for saying yes, even though you didn't take my $10. I'm going to save it forever. To remember tonight. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. Nobody ever says yes to kids like me. Nobody ever. Her voice faded. Nobody ever stays. She slept. Alexander sat there in the dark, holding the hand of a child he'd met 3 hours ago, and felt something shift inside him. Something that had been locked down tight since the funeral. He thought about Emma, about how she'd always wanted to help people, how she'd volunteered every weekend, how she'd come home with stories that made him uncomfortable because they highlighted problems he'd spent his life ignoring. Daddy, promise me something, she'd said once. Promise me that if you ever get a chance to really help someone, not just write a check but really help, you'll say yes. Promise me you won't look away. He'd promised. And then he'd spent the next 3 years looking away, until tonight. Until a 10-year-old girl with a blue cookie tin had asked him to be her father for $10 and given him a reason to see tomorrow. His phone buzzed on silent. A text from Gerald, Sarah Reed will meet us at 9 a.m., be prepared. This is going to get complicated. Another text from Patricia. Mr. Grant, the board is asking about tomorrow's meetings. Should I reschedule? He turned off his phone. Tomorrow would bring complications, legal issues, difficult decisions. But tonight, a child who'd been alone for 5 nights was sleeping safely in the next room. Tonight, a man who'd been planning his own ending had a reason to wake up. That was enough. For now it was more than enough. Alexander woke at 6:43 a.m. to find Lena standing beside his bed staring at him. He jerked awake, momentarily disoriented. For a second, he thought it was Emma. Same size, same way of standing perfectly still, just watching. Then he remembered. How long have you been standing there? His voice came out rough from sleep. I don't know, a while. I wanted to make sure you were real. That this wasn't a dream. She paused. Also, I didn't know if I was allowed to leave the room without permission. In some of the homes you got in trouble for that. Alexander sat up slowly. His chest ached. You don't need permission. This isn't one of those homes. You can go anywhere you want. Anywhere. Anywhere in the apartment. Yes. What about outside the apartment? Let's start with inside for now. She nodded. Accepted that. So career day is today. Are you still coming? Or did you change your mind overnight? I didn't change my mind. I'll be there. 9 a.m. sharp. Relief flooded her face. Really? Really? But first we need to get you ready. Do you have school clothes? Clean clothes. She gestured at herself. She was wearing the same jeans and gray hoodie from last night. This is it. This is all I have. Well, except for a spare shirt in my backpack. But it's not very clean. Alexander's jaw tightened. Okay. New plan. We're going shopping first. Getting you proper clothes. Then school. Shopping costs money. Lena. Right. You have $1 billion. I forgot. But she looked uncomfortable. I don't need new clothes. These are fine. These are not fine. These have holes. And they don't fit. Beggars can't be choosers. You're not a beggar. You're a kid who deserves clothes that fit and keep you warm. So we're going shopping. Non-negotiable. He thought she might argue. Instead she did something unexpected. She walked over and hugged him. Just wrapped her arms around his waist and held on. Her gray hoodie brushed against his shirt, still faintly smelling of cold air and rain. Thank you, she whispered into his chest. Thank you for not changing your mind. Alexander's hands hovered for a moment, before settling on her shoulders. I told you I wouldn't. People lie all the time. I'm not lying. She pulled back and looked up at him. I believe you. They went to a department store in Midtown that opened at 7. Alexander had never been inside this store, had never bought his own clothes. Actually, Rebecca had handled that. Or later, his assistant Patricia had arranged for tailors to come to the office. Now he stood in the children's section, completely lost. Lena was equally lost. She touched a sweater, then pulled her hand back like it had burned her. What's wrong? Alexander asked. Nothing. It's really soft, and expensive. The tag says $67. For one sweater. So that's more than I ever had. For one piece of clothing. Alexander knelt down to her level, spoke quietly so the other shoppers couldn't hear. Lena, listen to me. The fact that you had to count every dollar and still didn't have enough for something basic, that's wrong. It's not normal. It's not okay. It's a failure of every system that's supposed to protect kids. But that's not your fault. You understand. That's on us. On adults. On people like me who have too much while kids like you have nothing. But no buts. Right now, today, we're fixing that. At least for you. At least for this moment. So pick out whatever you want. Whatever you need. As many sweaters as you want. She looked overwhelmed. I don't know how to pick. Mama always got clothes from donation bins. I never picked before. Okay. Then let's figure it out together. They spent an hour in that store. Alexander learning what sizes fit a 10-year-old. Lena slowly, hesitantly picking out jeans that didn't have holes, shirts that weren't men's sizes, a winter coat that actually fit her frame. She kept checking price tags, kept trying to put things back. He kept putting them in the cart. At the register, the total came to $873. The cashier looked at Alexander. Will this be on your store card, sir? No, just my regular card. She rang it up. He paid without blinking. $800 was nothing. He'd spent more than that on a single tie. But Lena stared at the receipt like it was written in a foreign language. That's almost 100 times my $10, she whispered. It's just money. Just money. Right. But she looked dazed. They went back to his apartment so she could change. She emerged from the guest room wearing new jeans, a blue sweater, and her new coat. The clothes fit, made her look like a regular kid instead of someone who'd been hiding from the world. But her sneakers were still worn and frayed, the duct tape peeling at the edges. We forgot shoes, Alexander said. These are fine, Lena, they're fine. I like these, they're from Mama. She got them for me right before she got sick. They're the last thing she ever bought me. I don't want new ones. Alexander looked at the shoes, looked at her face, saw the way she held on to that last physical connection to her mother. Okay, he said quietly. We keep the shoes. Her face lit up. Really, really. Some things are more important than new. They took a car service to Roosevelt Elementary. Alexander had offered to call his driver, but then decided against it. Too ostentatious, too likely to draw the wrong kind of attention. In the car Lena fidgeted, picked at her new sweater, checked the time on the dashboard every 30 seconds. Nervous? Alexander asked. A little, a lot. What if the other kids don't believe you're my dad? What if they can tell we're pretending? We're not pretending. Today I'm your father. That's the deal. And we're not lying. We're just not explaining the whole story. But what do I call you? Dad? Dad Alex. Mr. Grant. Whatever feels right. She tested them silently. Dad feels weird. Too real. Dad Alex feels safer. Like it's just for today. Is that okay? That's perfect. They arrived at Roosevelt Elementary at 8:57 a.m. Alexander's chest tightened as they walked toward the building. The last time he'd been at a school for career day had been 3 years ago. Emma's school. He'd sent his assistant. He pushed the memory away. Other parents were arriving with their kids. A father in a business suit and his daughter. A mother in scrubs, probably a nurse with her son. A couple together, both wearing matching company polo shirts, walking with their twin girls. They all looked like families, real families, people who belonged together. Lena's hand slipped into his, cold and small and trembling slightly. He squeezed it. We've got this. Promise, promise. They walked into the school together. Immediately heads turned. Alexander was used to that, used to being recognized, to people staring. But this felt different. People were looking at Lena, at her hand in his, at the new clothes that didn't quite hide the exhaustion in her eyes. A boy about Lena's age approached. He was tall for 10, well-fed, with expensive sneakers and a smirk that made Alexander's hands clench. Lena Harper, the boy said. Where'd you find a dad? The shelter. 3 other kids laughed. Lena flinched. Before Alexander could respond, a man stepped forward, the boy's father, clearly. Same smirk, expensive suit, the bearing of someone used to being the most important person in the room. Trent, that's enough, the man said, but he was smiling, not really correcting his son, just going through the motions. Alexander looked at this man, at his $1,000 suit, his polished shoes, his aura of casual cruelty, and recognized a version of himself. The person he'd been 6 months ago. The person who looked through people instead of at them. I'm Alexander Grant, he said, extending his hand. Lena's father. The man's expression changed. Recognition flickered. Grant, as in Grant Capital Management. That's right. Now the man's handshake was firmer. His smile more genuine. Robert Morrison. Morrison Real Estate Development. I've followed your work. Impressive portfolio. Translation. You're rich, so I'll be polite. Thanks. This is Lena, my daughter. Lena squeezed his hand so hard it hurt. Morrison looked at her. Your daughter. I didn't know you had a daughter. The news said you lost your family in an accident. Things change, Alexander said shortly. If you'll excuse us. He guided Lena away, felt her shaking. That's Trent, she whispered. The main bully, and his dad is worse. Everyone's scared of him. He owns half the buildings in the neighborhood. Nobody's going to hurt you. Not while I'm here. But what about when you're not here? What about tomorrow? Alexander didn't have an answer for that. Because she was right. Tomorrow he'd be gone. Tomorrow she'd still be scared. Unless he figured out how to make this more than one day. The thought shocked him. Made him stop walking. Lena looked up at him with worried eyes. What's wrong? Nothing. Let's get through today first. Then we'll figure out tomorrow. Career day was held in the gymnasium. 40-some kids with their parents, all sitting in metal folding chairs arranged in a circle. Principal Martinez, a Latina woman in her 50s, with warm eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, welcomed everyone and explained the format. Each parent would have 5 minutes to talk about their job. Then questions. Then the next parent. Simple enough. They went in alphabetical order by last name. Alexander was scheduled near the end. Grant came after Diaz and before Harrison. He watched the other presentations. Morrison talking about real estate development, in terms that made it sound like he was saving the world instead of gentrifying neighborhoods and displacing poor families. Mrs. Thompson discussing her work as a surgeon. Mr. Okafor explaining software engineering. All of them spoke to their own kids, looked at them with pride, with love, with the kind of casual intimacy that comes from years of being a family. Alexander felt Lena lean against his shoulder, felt her weight, her warmth, her hope. Mr. Grant, Principal Martinez called, "You're up." He stood, walked to the front of the gym, 50 pairs of eyes on him. Parents wondering who he was, kids wondering what he did. Lena looking at him with an expression that made his chest tight. "Please don't disappoint me," that look said. "Please be worth the $10 I was willing to spend." "Hi," he said. His voice echoed slightly in the gym. "I'm Alexander Grant. I run an investment firm in Manhattan. We manage money for wealthy clients and institutions. Basically, I move numbers around and sometimes those numbers get bigger." A few parents chuckled. "It's not very exciting," he continued. "And honestly, most days it doesn't feel very important. I make rich people richer. I build wealth that largely stays in the same small circle of people who already have too much." The chuckles stopped. People shifted uncomfortably. "But recently, I've been thinking a lot about what actually matters, about what's important, and I've realized that all the money I've made, all the success I've achieved, it doesn't mean much if I'm not using it to help people who actually need help." He looked at Lena. She was leaning forward now, eyes wide. "So I'm making some changes. My company is going to start investing differently. We're going to support businesses that create real jobs, that pay fair wages, that actually improve communities, instead of just extracting wealth from them. And personally," he paused, "personally I'm learning that being a father, being there for someone who needs you, that's worth more than any amount of money." Silence in the gym. Then a small voice. "Is that why you're my dad now? Because you wanted to help?" Lena's question cut through the quiet. Alexander walked back to her, knelt down so they were eye level. "I'm your dad now because you asked me, because you were brave enough to reach out to a stranger and say I need help, and because saying yes to you was the first right thing I've done in a long time." She threw her arms around his neck. The gym erupted in applause. After the presentations ended, parents and kids mingled. Several people approached Alexander, some asking about his company, others commenting on his speech. A few, the ones with kind eyes, asking about Lena. "How long have you two been together?" Mrs. Thompson asked gently. "Since last night," Lena answered before Alexander could speak. Mrs. Thompson's expression sharpened. "Last night? She means since we reconnected," Alexander said quickly. "We've known each other for a while, but we just started living together yesterday." It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Mrs. Thompson looked between them. "I see. Well, Lena, I'm glad you have someone looking out for you now. You're a sweet girl. You deserve someone who cares." "Thank you," Lena whispered. As they were leaving, Trent Morrison appeared again, blocking their path. "My dad says you're lying," Trent said to Lena. "He says there's no way a rich guy like Mr. Grant would take in some runaway. He says you're scamming him for money." Lena's face went pale. Alexander stepped between them. "Your father is wrong, and you need to apologize to Lena. Now, or what? Or I'll have a conversation with your father about how he's raising a bully. And trust me, that's not a conversation he'll enjoy." Trent hesitated. Some of his bravado cracked. Whatever. She's still a nobody. He walked away. Lena's eyes were wet. "He's right. I am a nobody." "No." Alexander knelt down again. "You're not. You're one of the bravest people I've ever met. You ran away from something awful. You asked for help when most people would have been too scared. You found me. That's not nobody. That's a fighter. That's a survivor. But tomorrow you'll be gone. Tomorrow I'll be alone again. And Trent will still be right." The words hit him like a punch. Because she was right. Their deal was for one day. Tomorrow he was supposed to return to his life, and she was supposed to what? Find another park, another stranger, except he couldn't do it. Couldn't imagine walking away now. Couldn't imagine letting her disappear back into fear. "Lena," he said slowly, What if tomorrow doesn't have to mean goodbye? What if we figured out a way to make this permanent? Her breath caught. Permanent, like you'd be my dad for real, maybe. I don't know how it works. I don't know if it's even possible. But I'd like to try. If you want that. If I want that. Her voice broke. That's all I've wanted since Mama died. But people like you, don't adopt kids like me. That doesn't happen. It could happen. If we work together. If we're brave. Are you brave enough to try? She nodded so hard her whole body shook. Yes, 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 yes. Then let's try. They walked out of Roosevelt Elementary together, into the bright October morning, into a future that was uncertain and complicated, and probably full of problems. But for the first time in 6 months, Alexander felt something other than grief. He felt purpose. They stopped for lunch at a diner 3 blocks from the school. The kind of place with cracked vinyl booths, and laminated menus and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting in the pot for 6 hours. Lena ordered a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup, ate slowly, savoring every bite, like she was trying to make the meal last forever. Alexander watched her and tried to figure out what he'd just committed to. Tried to understand what making this permanent actually meant. Adoption. That's what he'd implied. Taking legal responsibility for another human being. For a traumatized 10-year-old who'd been through more than any child should ever experience. Was he capable of that? Him, a man who couldn't keep his own family safe, who'd failed his wife and daughter in every way that mattered. His phone buzzed. Gerald, where are you? Sarah and I are at your apartment. Alexander checked the time. 11:17. He'd completely forgotten about the 9 a.m. meeting. He texted back, long story. Be there in 30 minutes. Lena looked up from her soup. Is something wrong? My lawyer is at my apartment. He wants to talk about your situation. My situation. About making this permanent. About how we do this legally. Fear flickered across her face. Legal means social services. Social services means they'll take me away. Not necessarily. My lawyer is one of the good ones. He'll help us figure this out. You promise? He wanted to promise. Wanted to tell her everything would be fine. But he'd learned in 6 months of grief that promises were fragile things. That life could shatter them without warning. I promise I'll fight for you, he said instead. I promise I won't give up without trying everything. That's the best I can do. She nodded slowly. That's more than anyone else has promised me. They took a car back to his building. In the elevator, Lena pressed close to his side. Her hand found his and held tight. What if they say no? She whispered. What if they say I have to go back? Then we figure out something else. Like what? I don't know yet. But Lena, I'm not sending you back to that apartment, or to that man. Whatever happens, we'll find a safe place for you. I promise that much. Gerald and Sarah Reed were waiting in his living room. Gerald tall, black, silver-framed glasses, the bearing of someone who'd spent 30 years winning cases, stood by the windows. Sarah, petite, sharp-eyed, wearing a navy pantsuit, sat on the couch with a leather briefcase open on the coffee table. Both of them looked at Lena with expressions Alexander couldn't quite read. This is her, Sarah asked gently. This is Lena, Alexander confirmed. Lena, this is Gerald Pritchard and Sarah Reed. They're lawyers. They're here to help. Lena didn't move from behind Alexander. Help how? Help figure out how we can keep you safe, Sarah said. How we can make sure you don't have to be scared anymore. How we can make Mr. Grant your legal guardian if that's what you both want. What if I don't want to talk to lawyers? What if I just want to stay here? I understand, Sarah said. But there are rules, laws about how adults and children can live together. We have to follow those rules, or Mr. Grant could get in serious trouble, and you could be taken away and placed somewhere neither of you gets to choose. So talking to us, working with us, that's how we prevent that. Does that make sense? Lena looked up at Alexander. Do you trust them? With my life? Okay. She stepped out from behind him, sat on the couch across from Sarah. What do I have to do? For the next hour, Sarah asked questions, gentle questions, careful questions, but questions that still made Lena shrink in on herself. Where had she been staying? The park, mostly. Sometimes the subway stations at night. Who was her next of kin? Nobody. Mama's sister died before Lena was born. No grandparents. No aunts or uncles she knew about. What about her stepfather? Gone. After Mama died, he started drinking. Then the night he hit her, she ran. She didn't know where he was now. Didn't want to know. Had she been in foster care? Yes, once, for 3 weeks, until she ran away because the foster father. Sarah held up a hand. You don't have to give details. Not right now. Just yes or no. Did someone hurt you in that placement? Yes. Did you report it? I tried. Nobody believed me. Said I was making it up. Said I was a troubled kid looking for attention. Sarah's expression hardened. I believe you. And that was wrong. They were wrong. But Lena, I need to know, are you willing to give the system another chance? If we can find a safe placement, either with Mr. Grant or with someone else, are you willing to try? Will it be him? Lena looked at Alexander. If I say yes, can I stay with Dad? Alex? That's what we're going to try for, Sarah said. But I have to be honest, it's not going to be easy. Mr. Grant is a single man with no prior child care experience. The court will want to know why he's seeking custody of a child he just met. They'll investigate his background, his motivations, his relationship with you. They'll want to make sure this is in your best interest and not just in trying to replace his dead daughter. Lena finished quietly. I'm not stupid. I know that's what people will think. The words hit the room like a bomb. Alexander's breath stopped. Gerald closed his eyes. Sarah's expression didn't change, but her hand tightened on her pen. Is that what you think? Sarah asked carefully. No, I think he's sad and lonely, and I'm sad and lonely, and we found each other. I think he said yes because he's a good person who saw someone who needed help. But I'm not dumb. I know other people won't see it that way. Then we need to be prepared for that, Sarah said. We need to have answers. Mr. Grant, why do you want custody of Lena? And please think carefully before you answer, because this will be the question the court asks. The question the media will ask if this goes public. So tell me, why her? Why now? Alexander looked at Lena. At this child who'd walked into his life less than 24 hours ago and somehow become essential. Because she asked me, he said simply. Because in 6 months of grief, of wanting to die, of seeing no point in continuing, she gave me a reason. She walked up to a stranger in the park and said I need help, and I realized that for the first time in half a year, I could do something that mattered. I could say yes to someone who actually needed it. That's not going to be enough for the court. Then what will be enough? What do they want me to say? That I have extensive childcare experience. I don't. That I've been planning to adopt. I haven't. That this is carefully thought out and rational. It's not. His voice rose. A 10-year-old girl offered me her life savings to be her father for one day, and I realized that everything I've built, all the money, all the success means nothing if I can't help one child who's brave enough to ask. If that's not a good enough reason for the court, then the court can go to hell. Alex, Gerald said quietly. That's not helping. I don't care. I'm not going to pretend this is something it's not. Lena needs help. I can help her. It should be that simple. But it's not, Sarah said. And if you want to actually keep her, if you want this to work, you need to play by the rules, even when the rules are stupid, even when they don't make sense, because the alternative is she goes into the system and you lose all say in what happens to her. Is that what you want? No. Then we do this my way. We file for emergency temporary custody. We argue that Lena is in immediate danger if she's returned home and that you have the means and willingness to provide safe harbor. We cooperate fully with child services. We do a home study, background checks, psychological evaluations. We build a case that this placement is in Lena's best interest. And if we're lucky, if we get a judge who actually cares about the kid instead of the process, we get approval for temporary guardianship while we work toward permanent custody or adoption. How long does that take? Lena asked. Months. Maybe a year, maybe more. What happens to me during those months? If the court approves emergency placement, you stay with Mr. Grant, under supervision, with regular check-ins from a caseworker, with rules about school attendance, medical care, therapy, but you'd be safe. You wouldn't have to go back. And if they don't approve it, Sarah hesitated, then you'd go into temporary foster care while we sort out permanent placement. Back into the system, Lena whispered. Her voice trembled then hardened. I'm not going back there. You don't understand. They'll send me home, back to him. And if that happens, he'll find a way to make me pay for running. I'd rather live in the park forever than go back to that apartment. Lena, I mean it. If your plan is to put me back in foster care or with him, then I'm leaving. Right now. I'll go, and you'll never find me again. She stood up, started toward the door. Alexander moved faster, stepped between her and the exit. Wait, he said. Just wait, please. Why? So I can hear more about how the system is going to save me. The system doesn't save kids like me. It just moves us around until we disappear. Then we don't use the system. We find another way. There is no other way. There's always another way. He knelt down, looked her in the eyes. Lena, I promise you, I will not let them put you somewhere unsafe. If the court says you can't stay with me, if they say you have to go into foster care, then we'll run. Both of us. We'll leave the state, leave the country if we have to. Whatever it takes to keep you safe. Gerald's voice was sharp. Alex, you can't say that. That's kidnapping. I don't care. I'm not sending her back into a situation that already broke her. If that makes me a criminal, fine, I'll be a criminal. Sarah and Gerald exchanged a look. Then Sarah spoke carefully. Mr. Grant, I appreciate your sentiment, but running is not a viable long-term solution. What Lena needs is stability, legal protection, a permanent home, and the only way to get that is to work within the system, however flawed it is. The system wants to help you, Gerald added. Both of you, but you have to meet it halfway. Lena looked at Alexander. Do you really mean it? You'd run with me if they tried to send me back to him? Yes, even though you'd lose everything. Your company, your money, your reputation. I don't care about any of that. Not anymore. She studied his face, searching for lies, finding none. Okay, she said finally. I'll try. I'll talk to the social workers. I'll do the interviews and the evaluations and whatever else they want. But if they try to take me away from you, if they try to put me somewhere that feels wrong, I'm gone. And I won't come back. Fair enough. Sarah closed her briefcase. Then here's what happens next. I'm calling child services right now. We're going to report this situation voluntarily. We're going to explain that Mr. Grant found a runaway child who fled an abusive home and wants to provide temporary shelter while we sort out permanent arrangements. We're going to request emergency placement authorization, and we're going to hope that the caseworker assigned is one of the good ones. And if they're not, Alexander asked, then we fight. But Mr. Grant, I need you to understand, the moment I make this call you lose control. The system takes over. They'll decide what happens next. Not you, not me, them. Are you prepared for that? He looked at Lena, at this brave broken child who'd somehow become the most important person in his world in less than 24 hours. Make the call, he said. Sarah pulled out her phone, dialed, spoke in calm professional tones. This is Sarah Reed, counsel for Alexander Grant. I'm calling to report a child welfare situation and to request emergency placement authorization. Lena sat back down on the couch. Her hand found Alexander's and squeezed tight. Thank you, she whispered, for not sending me away. I'm not going to send you away, ever. No matter what happens. You can't promise that. Watch me. Outside the windows, the city continued its endless motion, indifferent to their struggle. Indifferent to whether one frightened child found safety or disappeared back into the cracks. But inside this apartment, two people were fighting against a system designed to protect children but too often failed them, fighting against laws that valued procedure over people, fighting for something that should have been simple but somehow wasn't: the right of a child to be safe and a father to protect her. Sarah hung up. They're sending someone over. Today, within 2 hours, a caseworker named Janet Morrison. She'll interview both of you, assess the living situation, and make a recommendation about emergency placement. What are the chances she approves it? Gerald asked. Honestly, maybe 50-50, maybe less. It depends on her caseload, her experience, her personal philosophy about these situations. We'll make the best case we can. The rest is out of our hands. Alexander's jaw tightened. 2 hours. Okay, what do we need to do to prepare? Nothing. Just be honest. Answer her questions. Show her that this is a safe environment, that you're capable of caring for Lena, that this is in her best interest. Sarah paused, and Mr. Grant, try not to threaten to run away with her in front of the caseworker. That won't help our case. Despite everything, he almost smiled. Noted. They spent the next 2 hours in tense waiting. Sarah coached them on what to say, what not to say. Gerald made calls to contacts in child services, trying to get information on Janet Morrison. Lena stayed close to Alexander, didn't speak much, just held his hand, and stared out the windows at the park below. At 1:43 p.m., the doorman buzzed. Mr. Grant, a Miss Morrison from Child Services is here to see you. Send her up. Alexander stood. Lena stood with him. They faced the elevator together. Whatever happens, he said quietly, we face it together. Okay, okay. The elevator doors opened, and Janet Morrison stepped out, carrying a clipboard and the weight of a broken system on her tired shoulders. Janet Morrison was shorter than Alexander expected, maybe 5'4", with graying brown hair pulled back in a bun, and eyes that had seen too much. She wore a blazer that had gone out of style 3 years ago and carried a battered leather folder stuffed with papers. She looked exhausted. Mr. Grant, her voice was professional but not unkind. I'm Janet Morrison, Child Protective Services. Thank you for coming. Alexander gestured toward the living room. Please come in. Janet's eyes swept the apartment as she entered, taking in the expensive furniture, the art on the walls, the view. Her expression didn't change, but Alexander saw her making calculations, judgments. Rich man, runaway child. This better be what it looks like. Then her eyes landed on Lena. Something flickered across Janet's face. Recognition. Lena Harper, she said quietly. Lena went pale, took a step back. You know each other? Alexander asked. We met last year, Janet said. After your mother passed away, I was assigned to your case. I placed you with the Johnson family. She paused. You ran away after 3 weeks. We've been looking for you ever since. Looking for me. Lena's voice was sharp, angry. You weren't looking for me. You filled out forms. You filed reports. Then you forgot I existed, just like everyone else. That's not true. Yes it is, because if you'd really looked you'd have found me before he did. Her voice cracked on the last word. Janet's jaw tightened. We filed missing person reports. We coordinated with NYPD. We followed every protocol we had. But Lena protocol isn't designed for children who are hiding from abuse, who are terrified of being sent back. Lena said nothing, just stared at Janet with an expression Alexander couldn't quite read. Anger, fear, and something brittle beneath both. Janet turned to Alexander. Mr. Grant, I need to understand what's happening here. Miss Reed called and said you found Lena last night, that you're requesting emergency placement authorization. Is that correct? Yes. And your relationship to this child is what exactly? We're. He struggled for words. I want to help her. I want to provide her with a safe home. That's admirable, but it doesn't answer my question. What is your relationship to Lena Harper? Alexander looked at Lena. She looked back at him, waiting. She asked me to be her father, he said quietly. Just for 1 day, just to help her at school. And when the day ended I couldn't send her back to that park, or back to him. So you've known this child for less than 24 hours. Yes. And in that time you've decided to seek legal guardianship. Yes. Mr. Grant, do you understand how that sounds? How concerning that is from a child welfare perspective. I understand that it's unusual, but unusual. Janet's voice hardened slightly. A wealthy single man meets a frightened runaway girl and immediately wants to take her home. That's not unusual, Mr. Grant. That's a red flag. That's exactly the kind of case we're trained to scrutinize. Alexander felt his temper rise, forced it down. I understand your concern, but this isn't what you're implying. I'm not some predator. I'm just a man who saw a child who needed help and decided to help her. Everyone says that. Everyone has a perfectly reasonable explanation. Janet pulled out a notepad, started writing. Tell me exactly how you met, every detail. So he told her. The park, the bench, the $10. career day, all of it. Janet listened without interrupting. When he finished she turned to Lena. Is that accurate? Is that how it happened? Yes. And you asked him to be your father, for money. I wasn't trying to buy him. I just wanted to show him I meant it, that I needed someone to show up for me. I didn't know what else to do. Why him? Why this particular man? Because he looked sad, like me. And I thought maybe sad people understand each other. Maybe we could help each other not be so sad. Janet made more notes. Lena, has Mr. Grant touched you inappropriately in any way? Has he made you feel uncomfortable or unsafe? No, never. He's been, Lena's eyes filled with tears, he's been the first person in a long time who made me feel like I mattered, like I was safe. Please don't take me away from him. Please, I'll do whatever you want. Just don't. I'm not trying to take you away, Janet said, but her voice had softened slightly. I'm trying to understand the situation, to make sure you're protected. I am safer than I've been since Mama died. But you don't really know this man. You've only known him for one day. So, how long do you have to know someone before they're allowed to care about you? Because the people who were supposed to care about me, my stepdad, the foster family you placed me with, they're the ones who hurt me. But this stranger, this man I just met, he's shown me more kindness in one day than anyone else ever did. Janet looked at Alexander. Is it true you lost your family, your wife and daughter? Yes, 6 months ago. And you don't see how that might affect your judgment here. How you might be trying to fill a void by taking in a child who reminds you of what you lost. The words stung because they were partly true, but only partly. My daughter was 11, Alexander said quietly. Same age as Lena. She used to volunteer at shelters. She'd come home with stories about kids who needed help, kids the system failed. And I'd listen, and then I'd go back to my office and do nothing. I'd make more money and ignore the problems she was begging me to see. He paused, swallowed hard. So yes, this is partly about Emma, about trying to be the person she thought I was. But it's also about Lena, about this specific child who had the courage to ask for help, who saw something in me worth $10, who gave me a reason to see tomorrow when I didn't think I would. That's a lot of weight to put on a 10-year-old. Janet said. I know, and I'm not putting it on her. I'm taking it on myself. The weight of keeping her safe, of giving her the life she deserves. That's my responsibility, not hers. Janet made more notes. Then she stood. I need to inspect the rest of the apartment, see where Lena would be sleeping, assess whether this environment is appropriate for a child. Sarah stood as well. Of course, Mr. Grant will show you around. The inspection took 30 minutes. Janet examined the guest room, now Lena's room, the bathroom, the kitchen. She asked about security, about who had access to the building, about whether Alexander worked from home or went to an office. She asked about schools, about doctors, about Alexander's plan for Lena's education and healthcare. He answered everything as honestly as he could, admitted he didn't have all the answers yet, that this had happened quickly, that he was figuring it out as he went. Finally they returned to the living room. Janet sat down, looked at her notes for a long moment. Mr. Grant, I'm going to be frank with you. This situation is highly irregular. Under normal circumstances I would remove Lena from your care immediately and place her in emergency foster care while we conducted a full investigation. Alexander's heart sank. Lena made a small sound, half gasp, half sob. However, Janet continued, I've read Lena's file. I know what happened in her last placement. I know about the stepfather. I know the system failed her. And I know that sending her back into it right now would likely make her run again. Maybe somewhere we'd never find her. She closed her folder. So I'm making a judgment call. Against my better instincts. Against protocol. I'm authorizing emergency temporary placement for 72 hours. 3 days. During that time Miss Reed will file formal custody motions. I'll conduct further investigations, and will determine whether this arrangement can continue or whether Lena needs to be placed elsewhere. Relief flooded through Alexander. Thank you so. Don't thank me yet, because Mr. Grant, those 72 hours start now, and during that time, I will be watching, I will be checking in, and if anything at all, seems wrong, I'll remove Lena immediately and you'll have zero say in where she goes. Do you understand? I understand. Janet turned to Lena. And you need to understand that this is temporary, that there are no guarantees, that even if Mr. Grant has the best intentions, the court may decide this isn't the right placement for you. Can you handle that? Lena's voice was small but steady. I've handled worse. I know you have, Janet said quietly, which is why I'm taking this risk. But Lena, if you feel unsafe at any point, if anything happens that makes you uncomfortable, you call me, day or night. This is my direct number. She handed Lena a business card. You don't have to protect him. You don't have to be grateful. You just have to be honest. Understood? Understood. Janet stood, gathered her papers, looked at Alexander one more time. 72 hours, Mr. Grant. 3 days to prove you're not making a mistake. 3 days to show me this is what's best for Lena. Don't waste them. After she left, the apartment fell silent. Lena sat on the couch, staring at the business card in her hands. Sarah and Gerald prepared to leave as well. We'll file the custody paperwork first thing tomorrow, Sarah said. But Janet was serious. Those 3 days are critical. No mistakes, no judgment calls that could be questioned. Everything by the book. I understand. After they left, it was just Alexander and Lena. The apartment felt too big, too quiet. 3 days, Lena said softly. That's all we get. 3 days to figure out if this is real, or if it's just another dream that ends badly. Alexander sat beside her on the couch. Then let's make them count. How? By being a family. By doing normal things. By proving to Janet, and to ourselves that this can work. Lena leaned against his shoulder. What if it doesn't work? What if 3 days isn't enough? Then we'll find more time. We'll appeal. We'll fight. Whatever it takes. You keep saying that. But what if there's nothing left to fight with? What if the system just wins? Alexander didn't have an answer. So instead he put his arm around her and held her while she cried silently into his shirt. Outside, the sun began to set over Central Park, casting long shadows across the trees, the same trees she'd hidden beneath just nights ago before everything changed. 3 days to prove they were a family. 3 days to beat a system designed to help but too often failed. 3 days to turn $10 and a desperate question into something permanent. It would have to be enough. Day 1 unfolded in strange domesticity. Alexander woke at 6 a.m., earlier than he had in months, because he heard sounds from the kitchen. Banging running water, a muffled curse. He found Lena standing on a step stool trying to work his espresso machine. She'd changed into clean jeans and a purple sweater, her hair still tangled from sleep. What are you doing? She jumped, nearly fell, and he caught her just in time. I wanted to make breakfast, to say thank you, but I don't know how this works. She gestured helplessly at the machine. Italian, $3,000, a relic of Rebecca's obsession with coffee. There are too many buttons. Alexander's chest tightened. Emma used to try the same thing, perched on stools, turning breakfast into a disaster zone, presenting burnt toast like a gift. How about we figure it out together? He said. They made pancakes, real ones this time, from a box mix Lena chose at the bodega on the corner. She insisted on going herself. The fancy stores are too expensive and scary, so they'd walk there together. And for once, Alexander noticed the smell of fresh bread and city air instead of just hurrying past it. The pancakes came out lumpy, slightly burned, and perfect. They ate at the dining table. Lena had decided she wanted to practice being fancy in case she ever needed to impress the social worker. Tell me about your family, she said between bites. Your real family, Rebecca and Emma, what were they like? No one had asked him that. In 6 months he'd heard condolences, not curiosity. Rebecca was smarter than me, he said. A civil rights attorney. She spent her life fighting for people who couldn't afford fancy lawyers. She used to get so angry at me for wasting my education on making money instead of making a difference. Was she right? Yeah, she was right about most things. And Emma? Emma was like her. Fierce. She wanted to be a doctor, said kids deserve doctors who actually listen to them. She sounds amazing. She was. His voice cracked. She would have liked you. Lena reached across the table and took his hand. I wish I could have met her. Me too. They sat like that for a long moment. Two people mourning different ghosts but sharing the same grief. After breakfast, Alexander made calls to his office, to a school about enrollment, to a pediatrician about a checkup. Each call felt like a step toward something real. Meanwhile, Lena explored the apartment carefully, opening drawers, tracing books with her fingertips as if they might vanish if she pressed too hard. In Emma's old room, frozen in time with its posters and soft disarray, Lena paused. Whose room is this? Emma's. She was pretty, Lena said softly. She looked like her mother. Can I borrow one of her books? Libraries need addresses, and I never had one. Alexander's throat tightened. You can have all of them. Emma would want that. Lena chose the giver, clutching it to her chest like treasure. That afternoon Janet Morrison called to check in. Alexander passed the phone to Lena. She asked if you'd touched me. Weird, Lena said afterward. I said no. Was that okay? That was perfect, because it's true. I know, but sometimes the truth doesn't matter. Sometimes adults don't believe you. He met her eyes. I believe you, always, no matter what. Okay, she said softly. Day 2 was harder. An emergency board meeting, the company on the verge of revolt. Patricia called 6 times. Gerald's messages were blunt. They're voting you out. You need to show up. But showing up meant leaving Lena alone. I'll be fine, she said. I've been alone before. That's not the point. This is your home now. You shouldn't have to be alone here. So bring me with you, to a board meeting. Why not? You said I could go anywhere you go. He hesitated, then realized he didn't care what anyone thought anymore. Okay, get your coat. The boardroom went silent when he walked in with a 10-year-old. Grant, Richard Westbrook said slowly. What is this? This is Lena, Alexander said. She's with me. The meeting began. All predictable hostility and jargon, until Westbrook sneered. We need to know if you're still committed to this company. I'm committed to doing what's right, Alexander replied. If that's not enough, maybe I'm not the right person to run it. Gasps, protests, and then unexpectedly, Lena, excuse me, she said. I'm not supposed to interrupt, but what's the point of having all this money if you don't use it to help people? The room froze. Westbrook snapped. Little girl, you don't understand how complex. I'm 10, Lena said, undeterred. It doesn't sound that complex to me. You have money. People need help. Use it to help them. A few laughed, some didn't, but Maria Santos, the CFO, leaned forward. She's right, she said quietly. Maybe profit isn't the only thing that matters. The vote was close, 8-7, but it passed. As they left, Maria caught up with them. That was brave, she said. Both of you. I'm just tired of being a coward, Alexander said. Maria smiled at Lena. You've got quite a dad. I'm not really his daughter yet, Lena said. It's complicated. Most important things are, Maria replied. Day 3 began with a knock that didn't sound like Janet Morrison's. It was heavier, angrier. Alexander opened the door and froze. A man stood there, mid-30s, work boots, grease-stained jacket, a face that carried both exhaustion and rage. Where is she? He demanded. Lena's voice came from behind Alexander, small and shaking. Don't let him in. The man's eyes snapped toward her. You think you can just run off? You think you can embarrass me like this? Mr. Harper, Alexander's voice was low, cold. You need to leave. She's my stepdaughter. You have no right to keep her. I have every right to protect her from someone who hurt her. The man took a step forward. Alexander didn't move, just stood his ground. For a moment the air was heavy with the kind of tension that precedes violence. Then another voice cut through it. Mr. Harper. Janet Morrison was in the hallway, Lisa Wong behind her. Both had arrived just in time. Janet's tone could have frozen stone. You were informed to stay away while the custody evaluation is in progress. She's mine, he spat. You can't just hand her off to some rich stranger. She's not property, Alexander said quietly. She's a child. Lena had backed up against the wall, trembling. He's lying. He used to. Her voice broke. He hit me. Lisa moved toward her gently. It's okay, you don't have to say it all now. We heard enough. Janet turned to the man. You're leaving right now, or I call NYPD and add violation of a protective directive to your record. For a second he looked ready to fight. Then he saw Alexander's stance, the stillness, the quiet promise that if he took one more step he wouldn't leave standing. He turned, slamming the door behind him. Silence followed. Lena sank to the floor, shaking. Alexander knelt beside her. He can't hurt you again, he said. Not while I'm here. Her voice was barely audible. He always finds a way. Not this time. Janet crouched next to them. Her voice was softer now. Lena, you were very brave. You did the right thing telling the truth. Because of that we can finally protect you properly. Lisa opened her folder. I'm filing for emergency guardianship under immediate threat of harm. Mr. Grant, if you're still willing, you'll serve as temporary guardian for 6 months while we move to terminate his parental rights. Alexander nodded. Whatever it takes. Lena looked up, disbelief in her eyes. He's gone, really gone. He won't come near you again, Janet said, and if he tries he'll be arrested. For the first time since the knock, Lena breathed. Her whole body seemed to deflate, as though she'd been holding her breath for years. Thank you, she whispered. When the papers were signed, and Janet and Lisa left to file the report, the apartment was silent again, but it was a different silence, lighter. Alexander sat beside Lena on the couch. You okay? I think so, she said. Then after a pause, I thought I'd always have to run. You don't anymore. She leaned against him. So, does this mean you're really my dad now? He smiled. For 6 months officially. Maybe longer, if you'll have me. Deal, she said, and rested her head on his shoulder. Outside, the city glowed in the late afternoon light. The man who'd haunted her was gone. The man who'd saved her was here. 3 days had turned into safety. $10 had turned into family. The story broke sooner than either of them expected. A grainy photo taken from across the courthouse steps showed Alexander Grant holding the hand of a thin little girl in an oversized coat. By morning, every headline in the country carried the same words: Billionaire rescues runaway girl. Half the world called it a miracle. The other half called it manipulation. Alexander called it noise. He turned off the television, deleted his news apps, and went to the kitchen where Lena was standing on a chair trying to spread peanut butter on a slice of bread without tearing it. He took the knife from her and said gently, "Try holding it like this." She wrinkled her nose at him, then burst into laughter when the jar slipped from his hand and hit the counter with a thud. Later he tried to braid her hair. It came out crooked and uneven, sticking out at odd angles. Lena laughed so hard she fell onto the couch. "You're terrible at this," she gasped. "Maybe," he said, grinning for the first time in months, "but I'm improving." Her laughter filled the room, and for the first time since his wife and daughter's deaths, the apartment didn't feel like a mausoleum. That weekend he took her to the pool. Lena hesitated at the edge, toes curled, trembling. "It's too deep," she whispered. Without saying a word, Alexander stepped into the water fully dressed, shoes, shirt and all. Lena screamed, then broke into uncontrollable giggles when he resurfaced, dripping from head to toe. It was ridiculous and beautiful. He hadn't realized how much life he'd been missing until that moment. Days began to blur into something like routine. They burned toast in the mornings, argued over movies at night. Lena read aloud from the books she'd borrowed from Emma's old shelf, her voice soft, stumbling over words she hadn't learned yet, and he never corrected her. He just listened. Every mispronounced word sounded like healing. The board of directors didn't see it that way. They called an emergency meeting. "You've become a liability," Richard Westbrook said. "The company can't afford these stunts. Our investors," Alexander cut him off. "If compassion is bad for business," he said, "then maybe the business is broken." He resigned that afternoon. That evening, he drafted a new charter on a blank page. The Mariana Harper Foundation, named for Lena's mother, not a PR stunt, a beginning. When he came home, Lena was asleep on the couch, a cartoon flickering silently on the TV. He turned it off, and covered her with a blanket. The city glittered beyond the window, indifferent as ever, but inside, something had shifted. For the first time, Alexander felt he was building something that mattered. A few weeks later, a letter arrived. "My name is Sophia Diaz. I think I'm Lena's aunt. I didn't know she was alive." When they met, Lena went still. Sophia looked so much like her mother that the girl could barely breathe. Then she ran forward and clung to her. "You look just like Mama," she whispered. "And you," Sophia said, tears in her eyes, "look like a miracle." From that day, Sophia came every weekend, bringing cornbread and old stories of Mariana singing while folding laundry, of her laughter, her soft humming in the kitchen. Slowly, Lena began to remember her mother not through pain, but through warmth. The morning of the adoption hearing, Rain swept the city in fine silver sheets. The courtroom was small, its wood dark and polished, its air thick with the scent of paper and lemon polish. Lena sat beside Alexander, in a blue dress, Sophia had mended by hand. When the judge asked, "Do you want Mr. Grant to be your father?" Lena hesitated, then said softly, "I don't need a paper to know he's my dad, but if I have one, it means I get to call him that forever." The judge smiled. "Then forever it is." One strike of the gavel, quiet and final. Just like that, they weren't pretending anymore. They celebrated their way. 3 pizzas, eaten straight from the box on the living room floor. "Don't throw the box away," Lena said through a mouthful of cheese. "I'm making a picture frame out of it." He laughed. "A pizza box frame. Pizza makes people happy," she said. "That's good energy." After a while, she looked up. "Dad, I still have the $10 I tried to pay you that night." He raised an eyebrow. "You do?" "Yeah, I want to use it for something important, maybe a fund. We'll call it $10 of hope. I'll put in my 10, and everyone who believes in kindness can put in theirs. We'll help kids who need to be seen, like you saw me." His throat tightened. "That's a beautiful idea," he said quietly. "And I'll match your $10 1,000 times over." Months later, she stood on a stage in that same blue dress, her backpack slung over one shoulder, speaking to a room of 500 guests. Donors, politicians, reporters, all silent as Lena began. "My story started with $10. It wasn't enough to change the world, but it was enough to change 2 lives. Sometimes, hope doesn't need much. It just needs someone to say yes." The applause rose like a wave. Cameras flashed, but Alexander didn't look at them. He looked at her, and for the first time in years, he felt whole. That night, they returned home to their brownstone in Brooklyn, with its uneven steps and golden retriever named Hope. The Fifth Avenue apartment was long gone, traded for the hum of laughter and burnt toast. After brushing her teeth, Lena crawled into bed and asked, "Dad, do you ever think about that night? What would have happened if I hadn't asked you?" He smiled. "Every day. And, I think we both would have disappeared," he said. "You back into danger, me into the dark, and we would have missed this." She yawned. "So we really did save each other. We really did." She smiled sleepily. $10 well spent. He kissed her forehead. "Good night, my light. I love you, Dad. I love you too." Later, in his room 3 photographs waited on the nightstand. Rebecca, Emma and Lena on adoption day, past and present, loss and love. Everything he'd lost, everything he'd found. He whispered into the quiet, "Thank you for sending her to me." Outside, the city hummed its endless song. Inside, a family slept, a family built on $10 and a question. Proof that sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can rewrite an entire life.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.